right now. Don, how are you doing, as I always ask you?
Yeah, I'm wearing a hat. It's raining and a little misty out, and it's very cold. But Wolf, I'm okay, especially considering what the people here are dealing with. This is nothing to deal with. But speaking of reporting, I'm so proud of the reporters here on CNN, our CNN international reporters who are intrepid, and they travel all over the world and do this kind of work all the time, and they don't always get the recognition for it. Everyone from our Ed Lavandera to Ivan Watson to Ben Wiedemann to Clarissa Ward to Christiane Amanpour. I mean, just too many to name. I don't want to leave anybody out. Michael Holmes and Hala Garani, everyone here on CNN International. And it has just been, I've been amazed to watch them kick into gear. Fred Pleitgen, everyone. I mean, it's just really amazing reporting that they do. And this is, again, this is what they do every single day. They're out here risking their lives and covering the world.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've been watching them for all the years I've been at CNN. They risk their lives. They're courageous. And people don't necessarily always appreciate how dangerous these assignments could be.
Yeah, how dangerous it is and how they do it. And when this happens, they just kick right into gear. And it's like they're on autopilot because that's exactly what they do all the time. So I just wanted to give them some love and some appreciation, not only from me, but from the world who's watching them cover this with elegance and dignity. And showing the folks here some dignity as well. Wolf, I'll see you tomorrow night. Thank you so much. Enjoy the program. This is Don Lemon tonight. I'm here in Western Ukraine in Lviv, and this is our breaking news. Ukraine's president tonight removing 2 top generals, calling them traitors.
And today, another decision was made regarding anti-heroes. Now, I do not have time to deal with all the traitors, but gradually they will all be punished.
We're going to have more on that in just a moment here on CNN. And we've got new video tonight. Russian-backed troops firing rocket-propelled grenades in Mariupol.
Огонь! Выстрел! Заряжай! Огонь!
NATO warning Russian forces are not withdrawing, they're repositioning, and the Pentagon says there's no indication those forces are going to be sent home. So the question is, what will Putin do next? President of the United States Joe Biden today saying Vladimir Putin may be isolated and even putting some of his advisors under house arrest.
There's a lot of speculation, but he seems to be, I'm not saying this with a certainty, he seems to be self-isolating. And there's some indication that he has fired or put under house arrest some of his advisors.
Well, the president also saying that he is skeptical that Putin will withdraw all of his forces from around Kyiv. And that skepticism is warranted when you see what is happening in and around the capital. At least 2 missile strikes, 2 close to the heart of the city just today. In the suburb of Irpin, what the mayor calls continuous shelling, excuse me. Half the city utterly destroyed, and Ukrainian forces say even now it is still one of the most dangerous places in the country. In towns surrounding the capital, the roof completely blown off, home after home. Any sign of everyday lives that were lived there really just blown to bits. Look at that. Look at that video. Unbelievable. There are destroyed tanks in the streets in a village near Kyiv. That is what remains of the school right there. Just a few short weeks ago, parents sent their children here every day, expecting them to be safe. And I want you to just look at it now. It's just unbelievable. In the Kharkiv region in the northeast, officials say that Russian troops have struck 47 times in one day. In the southern city of Mariupol, a city where Russia has already attacked a maternity hospital, a theater sheltering hundreds of people with the word children in Russian visible from the sky, and a Red Cross warehouse. In the wake of that death and destruction, buses that were meant to evacuate some of the remaining residents reportedly held at gunpoint by Russian forces just today. Russia now saying it will reopen the humanitarian corridor from Mariupol to Zaporizhia tomorrow. More than 100,000 people are still inside Mariupol. I want to turn now to CNN's Frederick Pleitgen in Kyiv. Caitlin Collins at the White House for us this evening. Hello to both of you. Fred, I'm going to start with you because we're getting this new video. It's out of Kharkiv. It's showing the aftermath of that intense shelling. We're also hearing about intensifying airstrikes in Kyiv. What do you know?
Yeah, I mean, Don, the situation in Kharkiv is one that, we've been reporting about it quite a bit. It is one that has been catastrophic for a very long time because the Russians essentially are trying to encircle that city, and they've been attacking with some pretty heavy weaponry for an extended period of time. And you were just talking about the fact that the local authorities say that the city was shelled 47 times throughout the course of the day. I mean, we can see some of that video, just those flames coming out of those impact craters. And what we're hearing from the local authorities that it was not just 47 times that city was shelled today, but they had more than 380 rocket impacts that happened. So a lot of this is going on from multiple rocket launching systems. And that's one of the reasons why you're seeing those big flames and those big craters, because they're not just using the smaller version called the Grad rocket, but they're also using a very heavy rocket launcher, apparently. Again, this is according to the authorities there in Kharkiv, called the Smerch system. And that's one that can shoot about 90 kilometers, has a range of that. And it's 300-millimeter rocket, so certainly a very, very powerful weapon that, as you can see, is being used in an urban area, the Ukrainians say. They also say that there's some fighting in some other towns around Kharkiv. One's called Izium, which apparently now is also one of the big focal points of the Russians, which could, by the way, also be an indication of the Russians focusing more of their, or shifting more of their focus towards the east of the country, as they seem to be having a lot of trouble here around Kharkiv. And you mentioned, Don, those two missile strikes that took place. Apparently those were precision missile strikes using possibly Caliber cruise missiles. Those impacted not very far from where we are right now, and certainly this building was shaking. Many of the windows were shaking as well as those missiles struck. So as you can see, the capital still very much under assault as well, Don.
I want to get to Caitlin Collins of the White House now. Caitlin, President Biden is revealing new information about just how isolated Vladimir Putin is. What do you know about that?
Yeah, he's echoing these intelligence assessments that show that Putin is very isolated, something that the White House believed had happened as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Basically, his circle grew a lot smaller, but they think that's affecting the decisions that he's making. And it's also causing a lot of tension between the president and his top military advisors, to where they believe, as President Biden told us earlier today, that he believes that he is firing his senior advisors or placing them under house arrest because he is so displeased with what's been happening in Ukraine. Because, of course, remember, going into this, the U.S. had assessed that Putin believed they could take Kyiv in about 72 hours. Obviously, that has not happened. They have tried. It has been fruitless for them so far. And so the White House believes there's this sense of frustration between the president and his military advisors, that he's not really getting this full picture. The president did today, when he was talking to us about this, add a caveat, saying that, this isn't hard intelligence, this isn't hard evidence, this is just an information and intelligence that we've gathered. But it does paint a picture of what they believe is happening inside Russia. And it's something that's been confirmed by other governments' intelligence agencies, including the British Foreign Secretary, saying today that Putin is frustrated, that he didn't know they had conscripts in Ukraine. Those are those enlistees, of course. He didn't know that Russia accidentally shot down one of its own aircraft. Things of that nature that are obviously critical to knowing what is happening and getting a complete picture of what's actually happening on the ground. And therefore, it's causing this tension between him and his top military advisors, Don.
Fred, we've been talking about the cities there. Irpin, you just visited today, a city that is getting pummeled by Russian airstrikes. It's horrific, but tell us what you saw.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is one that's still getting very much pummeled by Russian strikes, by Russian artillery. You can see some of the video that we filmed today, and I mean, just look at the utter destruction there in Irpin. And it's not only rocket artillery fire and regular artillery fire that's hitting that place. It's also fighting that took place. And we have to keep in mind, just a couple of weeks ago, the Russians held almost that entire city. And this is really where the assault on Kiev was halted. You'll remember that when this war started, the Russians moved very close to Kiev in a very short period of time, and this is where the Ukrainian forces confronted them. What you see there, by the way, some of that was Russian tanks that the Ukrainians, and there's a fuel truck that the Ukrainians say that they disabled and completely destroyed. So that is where the assault was halted. And if you look at there now, there's some residents who are there. It's really not many, but there's also a lot of dead bodies still in that area. The authorities there are starting to bring some of them out. It seems to us as though there's going to be a lot more. And the mayor of that place says he believes about 50% of the buildings in Irpin have been destroyed. To us, that seems like he's underestimating things. We saw very few buildings that were still even somewhat intact. So it's a place where there is a lot of devastation, a place that is still being fired on, especially by artillery, but at the same time, also a place of big pride for the Ukrainians who fought there and who are fighting there, because they had this gigantic Goliath army coming at them. They were outgunned. In many cases, they were outmanned. But they took a stand, and they are pushing the Russian forces back. And one of the things that we really did notice when we were on the ground there is that morale among the Ukrainian fighters, the Ukrainian soldiers who were on the ground there, certainly was very high. And they say that they're going to continue and push the Russians even further back, Don.
Oh, boy. It's just heartbreaking. Caitlin, the president making an announcement regarding the strategic oil reserves. I think the gas prices, lowering gas prices, it's an historic action, isn't it?
It is. It's the biggest release that we've ever seen since this strategic reserves was created in the 1970s. And of course, this is the way that Americans are being most directly hit by what's happening inside Ukraine. Of course, it is raising their gas prices. And so President Biden is taking this step today. He announced that they're going to release this historic release, which is about 1 million barrels a day for the next 6 months. So ultimately, that'll be about 180 million barrels of oil that they will be releasing. But experts do say it's only going to have really a modest impact on gas prices. And we asked repeatedly to officials today, when do you think people can see the effects of what the president is doing here? They didn't really want to put a date on it, Don, because they don't seem to think it's going to be that much. And industry experts have said they do still think you will see those record high prices this spring and this summer, though they may not be as high as what they were going to be. And, the president can only control gas prices so much. It's a global market that sets the price. But this is a step that President Biden can take. They're hoping that other countries will join in and take steps in releasing from their emergency reserves as well. But it's an acute problem that the president is facing. Obviously, it's causing political issues for the president, because people, even if the president only has limited tools of what he can do, they still hold him responsible for it. And the midterms are coming up this fall. The thing is, I think that really stood out the most, Don, from what the White House was saying today, is they don't think this problem is going away anytime soon, because they've got this 6 month of these reserves coming out. They're also calling on companies to ramp up domestic production, but they say obviously that is not going to happen in days. That would take months to change, Don.
All right, Caitlin, thank you. Fred, thank you. Please be safe out there. I'll see you guys both very soon. A senior U.S. defense official telling CNN that Russia is focusing airstrikes on Kyiv, Chernihiv, Izium, and the Donbass region. Here's what Ukrainian President Zelensky said about the situation just tonight.
The situation in the southern direction and in the Donbass remains extremely difficult. Russian troops are accumulating the potential for strikes, powerful blows.
Joining me now, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander General Wesley Clark. He is now a CNN military analyst. General, good to have you on to help you analyze some of this stuff. Good evening to you. You heard President Zelensky. He says Ukrainian forces are doing everything that they can to stop invaders in the Donbass. What's the most effective thing that they can do to fight back?
What they need is they need more equipment. They really do. First, they need air cover, and they've got a few aircraft left, maybe less than 50. They need those MiGs brought in from around the world that their pilots can fly. That's the first thing. The second thing they need is heavy equipment. They need tanks, artillery, lots of munitions. What we've given them so far from U.S. stocks are we've given them Stinger, we've given them anti-tank things and so forth. That's worked really well. And infantry moved out from Kyiv, and you see the results.
For a little bit. We lost your audio for a little bit. Can you repeat what you just said,
Yep.
please? We couldn't hear it. It was a little, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, we've given them defensive equipment. What we need to do is give them the counter-offensive equipment. We don't actually have it. Our allies have it in Europe. Poland has it. Bulgaria has it. And the Ukrainians are asking, why can't we get access to the tanks and the artillery and so forth that the Polish and Bulgarian armies seem to, they're willing to give it to us. They want the United States to backfill it. Why can't we get that? Because ultimately, Don, it's not enough to push the Russians back. Those Russian forces are holding there north of Kyiv for a reason, and they'll be back. You have to have the offensive means and annihilate them. That's the way mobile warfare is fought in Eastern Europe.
Yeah. Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but what you're saying is very important, and I want our viewers to hear every word of it, General. So also tonight, President Zelensky is saying that he's removing 2 top generals because he doesn't have time to deal with all traitors. During wartime, that is a gut punch. What happened? What do you think happened?
Well, I don't have the inside details on it, Don, and I will try to find those. But we've known from the beginning that there were always some people in the Ukrainian government, maybe in the armed forces, maybe in the intelligence, who work for and report to the other side. It's just natural because of the long relationships. And I'm sure the Ukrainians have their friends in the Russian forces. And when they get identified, they have to be taken out. And it seems to me that's what President Zelensky's done.
General, some are questioning whether Russia has a central commander on the ground in Ukraine. You and others have noted this. It seems like they're running their military campaign out of Moscow. Is that why we see what we see happening here on the ground?
I think that's exactly right. It's run actually by Mr. Putin. This is the Russian model. He's adopted Stalin's model. Stalin ran World War II himself. He was the decision maker. He created around him something called the Stavka, or the staff. They did what he wanted. Maybe they gave him advice, but he was the decision maker. And I think Mr. Putin is the decision maker here. And Don, I think he's gotten some bad advice. Of course, people are going to lie to him because that is in the Russian system. They all lie to each other. They know they lie to each other. And yet, when they discover it, of course, they're very angry about it. That's the flaw in the Russian military ethic. It's been there for a long time because in the Russian system, if you admitted you made a mistake, you're the first guy to get shot for it. So everybody covers up everything. It's just the way it's always worked in Russia. And from my discussions with the Ukrainian officers who served in the Soviet army, it was still alive and well in the 1980s. That's the ethos of that army. Putin is the man in charge. He's listening to the generals, but he's measuring those generals, and the shakeups are inevitable. He's going to find people he doesn't trust, or maybe they implemented his decision wrong, or maybe he made a bad decision and they get the blame for it. But that's what happens in the Russian military. It happened to Stalin at the beginning of World War II. He fired a lot of people. That's the way it works.
General, I forget what the day that they call it when, they authorize the draft for the people who just turned 18, but Putin has authorized the draft of more than 134,000 Russian citizens into the army. The defense minister claims that they won't be heading to the hotspots, but clearly he can't be trusted. I'm wondering what kind of impact that could have on this war. And also, I'm being told by people here who I'm interviewing who are in contact with the Russian soldiers, right? Either at checkpoints or after they escape from their neighborhoods. They are saying that it doesn't appear that the Russian soldiers' hearts are in there. They're telling them they are here because they're ordered to be here, not necessarily because they want to be here. Can you talk to me about that, please?
Well, look, a lot of these Russian soldiers that came in were lied to. They thought they were going on an exercise. They didn't know they were actually going to war. And some of them are conscripts, even though Moscow says they aren't. So these are not motivated, well-led soldiers. They want out. But there is one thing about the Russian military that I think they all understand. If you surrender and you're then repatriated, you're going to be viewed as a traitor or a spy, and you're going to be eliminated. In World War II, the Soviets killed thousands of their own returning prisoners of war because they didn't trust them. And this is simply the way it works. So these first waves of Russian soldiers, they're not motivated, they're not disciplined as well. The draftees that come in, they may not be trained and able to fight for a while. But Putin is aiming for a long run in this. He has started a purge, just like Stalin did before World War II. He's tightened up internal security. He's arresting and eliminating dissenters. He's shutting down the opposition newspapers. He's blocking the press, the media. He's in this for the long term, and he's going to, according to the polls, the Russian people who don't know any better, they think it's a great thing to attack Ukraine. And so eventually there'll be higher motivation, either because of the propaganda or because at the point of a gun, they know they have to succeed or die. So this is a temporary thing. Maybe it'll work. Maybe the Ukrainians can win just because of this. But past records and Mr. Putin indicate to me otherwise. This is a blip or a pothole, but it's not the end of the conflict by far.
Yeah. Well, General, thank you. I'm so glad wanted our viewers to hear every word. What you have to say is so valuable, General. We learned so much. Thank you very much. We appreciate you joining us. Russian ground troops stalled near Kyiv, but from the air, attacks are only increasing. CNN's Christiane Amanpour is there on the front lines right after this.
You can help the refugees from Ukraine. Join the over 70,000 who've already raised millions for food, shelter, and more. Explore CNN.com/impact. Click to take action.
On the next Vital Signs, we're exploring the future of medicine.
The work we are doing is joy.
With the team that brought us the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine.
The first subject was dosed in less than 3 months.
Could their groundbreaking mRNA technology also help treat cancer? And get a sneak peek at what other innovations the future might hold, including lab-grown organs and AI-powered medical devices.
Vital Signs, this weekend on CNN.
Coronavirus. To get daily news updates in your inbox, sign up for the CNN newsletter. Coronavirus. Fact versus fiction.
When you're feeling frazzled, you might crave something sweet. But foods high in sugar could stress your body even more by raising your blood glucose levels. So instead of a candy bar, try snacking on cashews or roasted almonds. Cashews are rich in zinc, which is linked to lowered anxiety. And almonds are a source of B vitamins, which play a role in maintaining your mood. If stress leaves you feeling tired, pass on coffee, soda, and energy drinks. Caffeine can actually increase levels of the stress hormone cortisol. So consider a calming caffeine-free herbal tea, like chamomile, passion flower, or mint. One study found tea could help lower cortisol levels. But your best defense against stress eating may not be at mealtime, but bedtime. Some studies suggest getting enough sleep makes you less likely to make unhealthy food choices when you're stressed out.
Mainland China tolerates no signs of dissent whatsoever.
Are you anticipating dozens of people being prosecuted? Hundreds? Thousands?
Stories of mass internment camps have been trickling out.
Do you think you'll see your husband again?
This period of mourning is taking place in a real climate of fear. The humanitarian crisis that is unfolding in front of our eyes here.
This is one of the cells? Come on in here.
We're flying over ISIS front lines. This is the only protection we have. Nerves are still very much on edge. Firefighters have been battling this blaze for weeks.
What do you say to people who question climate change?
We need to do something now.
Ivan Watson, CNN.
Our mission here at CNN and journalists, the news comes first. That's when your heart beats a little bit faster.
More breaking news that we are following right now.
You really work as hard as you can, getting the facts.
We're learning more about our alleged plot.
It is critically important.
To our viewers in the United States and around the world, welcome to the Situation Room. We have breaking news.
Heard it all before? But have you heard it like this?
The ultimate disruptor looks set to shake up our world. We really can't ignore the impact that this has. What can we do that explores a fresh angle? So let's untangle the players and political forces. The truth is a lot more complex. What's really going on?
Fast-paced news, in-depth reports, and fact checks from the perspective of The Global Brief with Bianca Nobilo. Tonight on CNN.
Tonight, U.S. defense officials saying Russian forces are ramping up their airstrikes on Kyiv and its suburbs. President Biden says he is skeptical of Russia's claim that it's withdrawing its troops from that area. But in one town northeast of the capital near the front line, Russian forces didn't leave. They were pushed out or killed by Ukrainian fighters who are vowing to stand their ground if Russians come back. More tonight from CNN's chief international anchor, Christiane Amanpour.
The first thing you notice approaching the front northeast of Kyiv are the lines of villagers waiting for humanitarian handouts. They receive a bag of bread and basics to get them through these difficult days. The first week of the war, a shell hit us near the greenhouse. We barely survived, says this woman. We had help from strangers around us. They gave us bread and canned food. We wouldn't have managed otherwise. No one here knows when this war will end or whether Russia still has designs on Kyiv. The front line is about a mile away. For now, an uneasy calm prevails ever since the Ukrainian defenders stopped the Russian advance here. It was February 28th, they say, day 4 of the war. They want to show us how they did it, but first we have to clamber over the bridge they downed to see the armored column they managed to take out. The riverbank is littered with their skeletons, and this was a turkey shoot. Russian armored vehicles and tanks had come off the road to avoid the anti-tank mines, only to find themselves unable to cross the bridge and unable to reverse in time. Ukrainian forces tell us none of the soldiers inside survived. A little further up the road, 2 tanks have been virtually smelted, blasted almost to smithereens. 40-year-old Yevgeny, a veteran fighter, proudly tells us this was his handiwork. We all here have one role: to keep the enemy off our land, he says. First thing they did after seeing the village, they started to shell houses, just like that. They didn't see us. They didn't know we were here, so they just started to work on houses. And so I took the tank in my sights and I fired a rocket, and goodbye to him. The destroyed vehicles are stamped with an O. The Ukrainian officers here tell us this identifies them as Russian units that entered from Belarus to the north. Oleg is the officer who commanded this operation. As for now, looking at previous fighting we've had, I can tell you that we are trained better, he tells me. We have stronger morale and spirit because we're at home. They are afraid, but they go because they're made to. He's been battle-hardened ever since the first Russian invasion in 2014. He says his side has enough weapons, ammunition, and determination to win. I can tell you I'm almost sure the Russians are regrouping and not retreating, he says. Besides, we are preparing ourselves to go forward. We're not preparing just to defend here. US and British intelligence say Putin seems to have, quote, massively misjudged this situation and clearly overestimated the abilities of his military to secure a rapid victory. And this old lady tells us, I have seen one war and here we go again. I wish Putin would go away. The people of this land remain stalwart and the soldiers remain dug in, hoping they can continue to withstand whatever Putin has in store for them next.
Now, President Zelensky made his 17th appearance to a World Congress, a World Parliament, addressing Belgium and asking, as he does, for more weapons and more help. They absolutely need it. In the meantime, we just don't know what the future is going to be, how Putin will redirect and redeploy the forces. Will it lead to a stalemate? Will it lead to an ongoing war of attrition? And concerningly, according to the Allies anyway, the Polish Prime Minister told me today that despite the sanctions, Putin isn't quite yet feeling the heavy pain. The ruble, he points out, is doing quite well against the dollar. Don?
All right, Christiane, thank you very much for that. Talks between Ukraine and Russia picking back up tomorrow while Ukraine wants the U.S. to deliver more weapons and faster. I'm going to talk to President Zelensky's chief diplomatic advisor right after this.
I'm Jim Bitterman in Paris, and this is CNN.
It's 9 o'clock in the morning at the University of Dayton.
How is everyone? What we're going to do this morning,
Tony Talbot is teaching a class about slavery.
there's over 40 million human trafficking victims in the world today.
But his students aren't just learning the facts about human trafficking. They're being trained to teach others about it, students who are even younger than they are.
We get the students to become near peer educators, going into classrooms, giving human trafficking awareness presentations. If we tell children about this now, they can become part of the solution.
Hi guys, my name is Ami. I'm a second-year student at the University of Dayton.
Today, Talbot students are taking over Nick Pence' 9th grade American history class at the Dayton Regional STEM School.
It's definitely important to know what is trafficking, because maybe you're in that situation and you don't even know that you're being trafficked.
A lot more online trafficking is happening, and I didn't really realize that before, but now that we do, you can obviously use more precautions when you're online.
I'm hoping that my students, now that they're knowledgeable, hopefully they get a little bit passionate about it, become leaders. I'm telling you, you just gotta step aside and let the next generation do its thing.
Thank you.
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels, connected to your world.
I'm Hala Gorani in Lviv, Ukraine. This is CNN.
Russian airstrikes intensifying in the Donbas region of eastern Ukraine, where we're told Putin's forces are shifting their focus. Ukrainian officials in the area are bracing for the worst. Here's what the governor of Luhansk told CNN's Aaron Burnett earlier.
Basically, all the territory is being constantly shelled by heavy artillery. They use any possible means of heavy bombardment. They use cruise missiles, Grad rocket launchers. They attack us from the air with air bombs and warplanes.
Joining me now, Igor Zhuvka. He is Ukrainian President Zelensky's chief diplomatic advisor. We thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it, Igor. So cities across Ukraine are under intense fire, and U.S. and NATO officials say that the Donbas is going to come under renewed assault. Ukraine is making new requests for equipment, including drones, anti-drone systems, and more missiles. And U.S. officials say that they are moving aid into the country as quickly as possible. Do Ukrainian forces have the supplies needed to fight back?
Well, yes, we need the supplies, and without these supplies, it will be much harder for us to do on the ground. But definitely we need much more supplies. And you mentioned some items I will add to these tanks, armored vehicles, and very importantly is the equipment to defend our skies. Because, like you well know, NATO countries, together with NATO as an institution, unfortunately refuse Ukraine of enclosing the skies over Ukraine. So that's why, being realistic, we please demand out of NATO nations some equipment for us ourselves to protect the skies. I mean, anti-aircraft warfare system, anti-missiles warfare system, and fighter jets. With this equipment, we will be able to defend the skies while we're doing more or less good on the grounds, and with additional supply of the grounds munition, we will be very quickly moving into the victory.
President Zelensky says that the negotiations with Russia are only words. Have the Russians made any concessions, and what can you accomplish during those talks?
Well, Russian delegation have our proposals on the table. So we during the last round, we presented to them the draft Ukrainian treaty, an international legally binding treaty on security guarantees for Ukraine, meaning a set of complex of hard security guarantees by major international powers such as the US, UK, Germany, France, Turkey, in order to prevent such situations as Russian aggression happening in future. So Russians have this proposal. They took it back to their capital, for consultations or whatever. We are hoping they will be coming back with a constructive proposals, but you have to understand that the real negotiations can be held on the level of presidents only. For the time being, my president is ready for such a negotiations. Unfortunately, this is not the case for Putin. He all the times looks for some excuses not to have these talks. He's dragging on the time. He's still hoping on some victories on the ground, which will enable him to be more strong in his position during the negotiations. But we are sure this will not happen. So we will have no major victories on the ground. That's why it's high time for him to sit at the negotiating table with President Zelensky, and possibly with the participation of the international leaders, such as the President of the US and other world leaders.
Yeah, those negotiations are tomorrow. We'll see what happens. Are there any circumstances in which Ukraine would be willing to give up territory, Igor?
No, not in any case. We will not give up any single inch of Ukrainian territory. We will not trade Ukrainian territory. So all Ukrainian territories should remain Ukrainian.
Putin has said that Ukraine is not even a real country. So do you think that he will ever sit down with President Zelensky?
Well, it's his usual mantra, which he's speaking for all the years he's in power, that Ukraine is a failed state, that the biggest tragedy for him in the 20th century is the collapse of the Soviet Union. So his dreams is to return Ukraine back to the Russian orbit. So definitely, generally, he has these goals. But, any war, any aggression, and this is a real aggression, this is really war, Russia against Ukraine, should end with peaceful settlements. So, yes, we are hopeful that together with the international community, that's why I make a stress, international community should push on him to sit at the negotiation table. We appreciate the position of many world leaders who suggest their mediation efforts, who suggest us bringing him to the negotiating table. So with the help of your international community, hopefully he will be there at the negotiation table.
What is the most important thing the world needs to know about what is happening in your country?
The world needs to know that in the 21st century, in the middle of Europe, it's not only a war, it's uncivilized war. When Russian armed forces wage a warfare, not only against the military infrastructure, not only against Ukrainian soldiers, but mostly against Ukrainian women, Ukrainian children, Ukrainian civilians. So once again, you have to understand, you have to realize, sitting by your TV or computer, you have a war in the middle of Europe. Ukraine is able to stop the aggressor in Ukraine. Otherwise, if we together will not stop the aggressor in Ukraine, this aggression will spread to further European countries, and who knows, maybe to other countries as well. So please, let's together stop aggressor by sanctions, by weapons, and by political support of Ukraine.
Igor Zovko, thank you so much. We really appreciate you appearing on the program. Be safe.
Many thanks.
And I spoke with Igor just before this program. Next, a powerful personal story from a family you've gotten to know on this show. He's an American, she's Ukrainian, and her family was trapped in the destroyed city of Mariupol for weeks. They tell me the harrowing story of their escape. That's next. You don't want to miss it.
We've been building avatars since 2016, so I would say we haven't been chasing a moment. We've been building for this moment for quite some time and really studying, I think, the younger demographic and really where they're trending towards, which is really trying to express an authentic version of themselves. So, you know, I've always felt comfortable behind a keyboard, right? So if I was in school, when I was growing up in middle school or in high school, I would be kind of nervous to maybe talk to a girl, or I'd be kind of nervous to go, you know, show off in front of friends or communicate with friends or whatever. But as soon as I got home and I got into AIM and I got behind my username, I became the most outgoing and gregarious character that there was. You're able to create this manifestation of yourself in this very fantastical art form. So we hope that avatars can be that safe haven that allow you to express yourself from every different segment of your imagination and serve as your emotional surrogate.
Today we live in an unpredictable environment and news races around the world at breakneck speed.
Our engine continues, our impetus, our momentum.
My show brings you the latest news and top news makers. Give me the facts on voter fraud.
There has never been a moment where voter fraud has affected the outcome of an election.
And we also dive below the headlines to explore vital issues impacting our lives.
Normally this theatre would be filled with people and art and debate and energy, and so now we have to rely on the two of us.
How interesting is it to be Tyler Mitchell today? It's crucial we make sense of what's happening. There seems to be some confusion that maybe you can clear up. Where are the US forces in Syria going? And fully understand what's at stake.
What's happening now in the world is a great thing because people are talking about subjects they never did before.
Amanpour, tonight on CNN. This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
5 is your lucky number. That's how many servings of fruits and vegetables you need each day to help live your longest life. A study released by the American Heart Association says about 2 servings of fruit and 3 servings of vegetables each day is associated with a lower risk of mortality. For your vegetables, leafy greens are rich in vitamin C and beta carotene. Those include spinach, lettuce, and kale. Be aware though, starchy vegetables like peas, corn, and potatoes didn't seem to lower the risk of early death. Now in the fruit category, berries and citrus fruits come packed with vitamin C, fiber, beta carotene, and other nutrients, but make sure you eat whole fruits for those benefits. Most fruit juices don't come with as many benefits and can even have added sugars.
I want to turn now from southern Ukraine and the key port city of Odessa, which is bracing for a possible attack by Russian forces. CNN's Ed Lavandera is there. Ed.
Don, here in southern Ukraine, residents are anxiously watching what is happening with Russian forces in the north of Kyiv. As we have been reporting, these Russian forces believed to be moving into Belarus, north of Ukraine, to regroup and refit and get resupplied. And everyone here is paying close attention to the fact that all of the talk right now seems to suggest that these forces are regrouping to renew their attack and to push into eastern Ukraine. At the early onset of the war, it was believed that these forces would try to make their way down along the southern coast of Ukraine toward Odessa, where we are. This is a key port city. Losing this city for Ukraine would be a devastating loss. It would essentially mean that Ukraine is a landlocked country. So there's a great deal of concern as forces have been in that contested area of the Donbass region, and concerned that they would be able to continue moving down the coastline. So far, in recent weeks, the Russian forces have been stalled out about halfway between here and Mariupol, the city that has been so besieged. So that is what they're looking at. And the real question here right now, Don, is the timing of all of this. Where do things stand? How long will it take Russian forces to regroup and refocus their energy on this part of Ukraine? And we've also heard from the United Kingdom Minister of Defense tonight saying that some 2,000 Russian soldiers were going to be repositioned from Georgia to focus on the eastern part of Ukraine as well. So a great deal of troop movements, not a lot of trust in residents here who don't really believe what Russians are saying publicly. So they're really monitoring where the forces are going and trying to figure out the timing of all of this. Don?
All right, Ed Lavandera, thank you so much. We'll be right back.
In 1917, Cartier came upon his breakthrough, revolutionary, by far most famous design, the Cartier tank. Now, the inspiration for this design was, as the name suggests, a British Mark IV tank.
For much of its history, it was an extremely exclusive watch. The tank was made in very small numbers until the mid-1960s. Cartier tanks from before the 1960s especially are tremendously collectible. It's an absolutely iconic design.
This became an elegant symbol, a very desirable watch. Through the ages, we have Jackie Onassis wearing this watch. We have Truman Capote, Andy Warhol, Duke Ellington, Jeff Goldblum. Team Tank is a stylish team indeed. It's a rectangular case and it has these very identifiable vertical sidebars called brancars. You can recognize a tank across the room.
Protein is great for building muscle and it benefits your hair and nails too. But while meats are a great source of protein, research suggests that replacing red meat with plant protein could help you live longer. Beans and lentils can be a start. They're rich in plant protein plus fiber, B vitamins, iron, and folate. Most beans are also low in fat. Plant-based sources of protein also include nuts and seeds. Try stocking up on almonds, pistachios, cashews, and walnuts. Whole grains like oats, buckwheat, and brown rice are also good sources of protein. And you might assume that all fruits and vegetables contain less protein than other plant-based foods, but protein accounts for about a third of the calories in Brussels sprouts, broccoli, asparagus, and artichokes.
Across Africa, businesses are working together like never before. All new on CNN, Connecting Africa.
Join me and Lenny Jokas as we crisscross the continent to show you how new connections are revolutionizing commerce in Africa. This month, Connecting Africa through opportunity.
Africans are opening the doors more to other Africans on the business-to-business level.
Connecting Africa on CNN in association with Afreximbank.
I'm Jenny Wassenaar, Chief Sustainability Officer at Trivium Packaging. Sustainability is an imperative for any business. If you look at the footprint of your organization, you have to make sure that by 2050 latest, you're at zero emissions. This is important for the Earth, it's important for future generations, but it's also important for your employees. So I'm expecting that businesses that do not focus on sustainability, that they will not be around for a very long time. Of course, this looks a bit like a threat, but it's actually not. It's a great opportunity for companies to embrace sustainability, take sustainability in your DNA, and make a future career and success for your business out of sustainability.
This is the result of one single blast.
3.3 million Ukrainians have now fled this country.
You don't have to go far to find a family who has been displaced.
We just heard an air raid siren ring out.
We run down for cover. It is hard to imagine life returning here.
In Kiev, Dnipro,
Poland.
This is CNN. So I really want you to settle in for this one, okay? Are you watching? A family whose story I've been following from the start of the war, and I got to meet them all today. Reunited after surviving what everyone who has been through it has called hell on earth. So let me explain this. You may remember Joe Reimers. If you take a look, he's all the way on the left. He's an American in Ukraine. He's there with his wife, Dasha, who is Ukrainian. They first came on this show to talk about their own escape from Kyiv when Putin's invasion began. But Dasha's family had been trapped in Mariupol, where Russia has unleashed its most brutal and indiscriminate attacks. So next to Dasha, that is her father, Oleg. He works taking care of hospice patients and didn't want to leave them behind. And on the far right is Dasha's uncle, Gennady, a pastor of a church in Mariupol full of people who needed him. Well, for weeks, Joe and Dasha have been living in agony with Oleg, Dasha's mother, and Gennady. They've all been living in hell. But they didn't want to leave Mariupol, which they still call the best city in the world. To them, it was. To Putin, it was a target. And if Mariupol is hell, well, you can guess who they think is doing the devil's work there. They finally had to leave or risk falling into the hands of the Russians. So I want you to listen very carefully to what they went through and how they feel about this war. At times, they seemed shell-shocked. At times, they seemed okay. But tonight, at least, this one family in Ukraine is together, alive, and safe. So you're waiting for 3 weeks for them to come?
Yeah, and we knew that every day the situation is getting worse in the city from what we understood from the news. So yeah, that part was hard.
Are you watching the news and the pictures of Mariupol and thinking, what were you thinking?
Yeah, we were watching everything, every channel we could find, every page on Instagram, everything. What I was thinking, I don't know, sometimes you have hope, sometimes you think, I'll never see them again, and it's all just, yeah, mixed feelings.
When you were able to communicate with them, what were you saying to them?
We were trying to make them try to go out of the city. Most of the time, they would ask, what's going on here?
Part of the reason for not going, I think, was, and they can answer this better, but was concern about if it was possible to leave, but also they felt responsible to care for basically between two different churches where people were sheltering under. There were, I think, more than 50 people total, a lot of whom were elderly women that they were caring for. You know, Oleg was going back and forth between churches almost every day.
Yeah.
I think through the shelling and everything.
Oleg, why did you stay? Why didn't you get out immediately?
We worked for the Blue Cross mission, and we took care of hospice patients located at the outskirts of the city. When the shelling began, the area was heavily and often under fire. So we had to move closer to the center, and we were taking care of elderly women, hospice patients. We moved our patients closer to the center, and when we lost our water supply and electricity in the city, we started an open fire and brought food there for these people. We used a big 30-liter cauldron to cook, and power generators to produce electricity for the other people to come charge their mobile phones and devices. We were providing food for approximately 40 or 50 people daily.
So you have to understand, he worked for this mission, but his brother is a pastor of the church where they were hiding, so he can maybe tell you more about this part.
What are you thinking about now?